Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. As you might have guessed from my attire today, we are going to go over to Italy, and I've got a very interesting beer for you. This is a brewery who I've never tried anything from, so it should be really quite interesting. These guys are well known for their kind of sour beers and wild ales. So we're going to go to a little town called Marentino, which is just to the east of Torino, or Turin as we would describe it in the Anglophone world, and we're going to have a taste of their beer called A Renna Gluh, which is their Christmas beer, but this one is supposed to taste a little bit like these kind of German glue vines, and if you've not tried those before, they really are quite nice and spicy and quite fruity things. It's almost a kind of mulled wine, if you like, so they are very nice, and I'm very interested to try this one today. So I actually have had this beer for maybe 2 years or something. It was brewed in 2012, so it is one that has matured quite a bit in my box, but unfortunately it was going to go out of date at the end of this month, so this is why I didn't save it for Christmas 2015, and I'm doing it during the summer, but I'm sure it'll be a nice beer regardless of the time that I'm actually reviewing it. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, but if you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do from Loverbeer in the fairly near future. So anyway, Loverbeer is owned by Wouter Loverbeer, and the first thing I thought when I saw his name was that he must have been French or Belgian or something like that, but I will explain a little bit about that later on, where his name comes from. But the brewery is located in a small town called Marentino, which is actually quite near Turin. It's a little bit to the east of the city in northern Italy. But Wouter began home brewing in 2002, and he produced his first beer, which was called Beer Bira, and he took this beer to be tasted by various well-known gastronomers in 2004, and he received excellent feedback for it, and they basically told him that he should become a professional brewer. So he heeded their advice and followed that path, and now he has quite a successful brewery. But he likes to combine many of the techniques from wine production for use in brewing beer, and quite a few of his beers actually use Italian grapes as one of the ingredients, and most of the beers that the brewery produce are sour beers or wild ale, so you can really expect quite a tart and quite vinous flavour from these ones. But apparently some people have described them as being very similar to Belgian lambic beers, and if you go and read the brewery website, Wouter does say that that's one of his favourite styles of beer as well, so you can see where his inspiration is coming from when he brews these beers. But the actual brewery itself uses a 10 hectoliter system, and it uses a combination of aluminium and wooden vats depending on the beer. The wooden vats are particularly well known, of course, from wine production, and this gives the sour beers a lot of their quite interesting flavours. But the beers are all available in 70 centilitres and 37.5 centilitre bottles. This one's a 37.5, but they undergo secondary fermentation in the bottle, also known as bottle conditioning. So yeah, to list the beers you can get from these guys, you get Beer Bira, which was the very first one, you get Beer Bruna, Dama Bruna, Marcellere, Duva Beer, Madamin, and also Papesa, and these are all different varieties of sour beers, so I think it's just the fact that they put different grapes and things in them that makes them a little bit different, and they obviously are matured in different ABVs and things like that. So if you're into your sour beers, Loverbeer from Marentino in Italy is one that you definitely want to check out. I actually bought this beer from Brewdog in Aberdeen, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, so maybe Brewdog are still supplying these beers. But this one is an 8% sour and wild ale, and just to tell you the story of the legend behind Wouter's name, actually, he puts this on his website. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before I explain this to you. So you'll notice on the top there that there is a little monk who is looking at the head of beer there, a kind of Belgian-y looking monk on the Loverbeer symbol. You can just see him kind of chilling out there. Maybe you can see it a little bit better on this label on the back, but there's a monk chilling there, and I'll just tell you the little story that's on the website here for Loverbeer. It says, Wouter believes that he comes from a historical brewing family, and the legend goes that a young monk escaped the siege of a monastery where he had lived, and he roamed unknown lands before meeting a young maiden who joined him on his subsequent journey, and he saw his grandfather in a dream one night who actually told him to marry this girl, and he, thinking this was a divine message, did so, and after a long journey they settled in a village in Calvados, and the young man actually took the name Loverbeer, which translates as meaning exactly the worker, and this was after the locals asked him who he was, basically, because they were very curious about these people arriving in their village. But he decided that he wanted to dedicate himself to something that gave him immense pleasure, and this was brewing beer. So many years later, one of this man's descendants actually had to flee his monastery because of another war, and this time he settled in Italy in the hills of Roero, where Wouter now continues the tradition of his family of brewing beer. beer. So this kind of monk's heritage, if you like, is why Loverbeer have this nice little monk on their symbol there. And as you can see on the bottom label there, you can see the nice reindeer being prepared by the I think it's meant to be Santa's elves actually. They're preparing the reindeer to take Santa away, but it's quite a nice little bit of artwork, this one, and I'm not sure if you will find this beer, but you can see on the side it says it is brewed in 2012, so it does have a really nice quite interesting heritage behind it, this brewery. But as I say, this brewery are very famous for their sour beers. This one comes in at 8% volume. It's meant to go out of date in the summer of 2015, so without further ado, I think we'll get this guy open and get on with the tasting. So it does open a little bit like a wine bottle. I'm not sure exactly how I'll tackle opening this guy, but we'll see. I'm not sure if this is a cork or exactly what it is. No, it is a pop top. So let's get this guy open. So as you can see, a nice, quite big smoky opening on this one as we get it out, and it smells very vinous. I'll just be careful with it as I'm pouring it, because I think there's going to be a lot of carbonation with this one. You can really hear the carbonation off this. I'm not sure if you'll hear that on the video, but it's a lot of carbonation sound coming off this one. As you can see, there was a kind of finger of a frothy, kind of slightly off-white head there, but that's faded away really quite nicely. So it's a kind of, I don't know how you would say, it's a kind of reddish, slightly coppery colour, this one. It looks very nice, a dark orangey, reddish amber colour. It looks nice. The head, as you can see, is faded away completely from it, which sometimes happens with these kind of sour beers, if you like, but a very, very interesting beer. Looking beer nonetheless. There's some big bubbles of carbonation just sticking towards the side of the glass, but a lot of little bubbles rushing up towards the bottom or the very surface. There's not even a head on it, but a lot of little bubbles just running up towards the surface there, and there is just a little bit of sediment in the bottom of this one, so it looks very, very nice. So let's give this guy a smell and see how we get on here. Yeah, so it's quite an interesting aroma, this one. It does actually smell quite like a German Glühwein, if I'm honest with you. You've got a sweet caramel malt base under this, and there's a little bit of biscuity element in there too, but you can really pick up the kind of cinnamon and sort of nutmeggy notes that you would expect from the Glühwein. Usually a Glühwein can actually smell a little bit citrusy as well. It's got a little bit of orange flavour in it, but there's a definite presence of something like aniseed or licorice in here as well. But it really does smell like a German Glühwein. So a lot of caramel in there really, but it's kind of punched away by this sort of licoricey or aniseed note too, but there's a good bit of cinnamon spice, or maybe even kind of nutmeggy notes. But you can pick up a little bit of the kind of vinous fruit in here as well, but it is more kind of subdued in favour of the caramel and the more licoricey or aniseed notes, this one. But a very, very nice smelling beer actually. It reminds me a lot of when I was in Germany just after Christmas and drinking these Glühweins. It was really quite nice. So without further ado, let's actually get stuck into this beer. I've really wanted to try this one for quite some time, so here's to another 500 beer reviews on Rampant Lion Reviews. This one is the A Renna Gluh, which is from Loverbeer in Marentino near Torino in Italy. Slange. Yeah, as you would expect from a sour beer. One thing I'm noticing about this is when I'm putting it in my mouth, it feels as if it kind of bubbles up quite a bit, which is quite interesting. The carbonation on this is quite interesting. It's doing a very kind of random job. When you first take the first mouthfeel, it almost feels as if it's expanding and bubbling up a little bit, but then it smooths out once your mouth adjusts to the very kind of sharp and tart flavours that you'll get out of this beer. But yeah, it's actually very like the aroma. I remember the German Glühweins being a little bit more darker than this. This is a very sharp, really quite a sharp kind of tart fruit flavour that you're getting off this. But yeah, there's a good bit of this kind of acidic, sort of slightly lemony, tart, sharp character coming out of this beer, which is what you would expect. And at the middle of the palate there, there is a kind of slightly nutmeggy, very lightly bready blanket that just goes over the middle of your palate there, and there's a sort of cinnamony spice, or maybe even a kind of nutmeggy flavour that just blankets the middle of your palate. But on top of that, you're getting this very sharp, lemony, tart, citrusy flavour coming out, I think. It's really just a characteristic of the sour beer. And there is a little bit of alcohol warmth that comes down here as well. With it being 8%, that's what you would expect. But you'll feel around the edges of the tongue, there is a kind of slightly floral, kind of spicy character around the edges of the palate there. And it's quite subtle. It's not like a big dry aromatic character as you would get from some of these American beers. It's just a more subtle element around the edges of your palate there. There's a lot of stuff going on in this beer. I've never tried one that's quite like this before. But yeah, there's a big underlying of aniseed flavour in this, and that goes all the way over the palate there. This kind of aniseed, or slightly, it's more aniseed than licorice, I would say, but this aniseed and licorice flavour, just it kind of mixes in with everything that's going on in this beer. It's a very unusual one, this. As I say, I've never tried one that's quite like this before. But yeah, around the edges of the palate, like I say, there's a bit of a kind of florally, slightly grassy, almost herbal character from the hoppy part of the beer. But there is just this underlying flavour of licorice and aniseed. It's quite mild when you move into the aftertaste, but you're still getting a little bit of that sharp, citrusy, kind of vinous, grapey character coming out of this one too. So it's a really very interesting beer, this one. There's no other way to describe it. I've never tried anything like this before, so if you do happen to come across the A Renna Gluh, give it a go. My memories of German Glühweins are that they tend to be a little bit more darker and more caramel and boozy, if that makes sense. But this guy is very, very tart, which, with this brewery being famous for sour beers and wild ales and stuff, then that's exactly what you would expect from it. But yeah, the first few sips of this beer, it'll take your mouth just a little while to adjust to the flavours in this beer, just because of how kind of unusual it is. But as I say, you've got a nice kind of slightly bready, cinnamony, almost nutmeggy spice bread that just blankets the middle of your palate there. All around the mouth you've got this kind of underlying licoricey or aniseed flavour in this one. There's some sharp kind of sherbet lemony tart flavours, quite a lot of that actually in this one, and this kind of vinous white grapey flavour going around the tongue as well, or green grapes I should say, white wineish flavour going on in this one. It's really quite interesting. There is a little bit of a kind of florally and slightly spicy element in this too, but it's a very mild flavour, not like the American beers as I was saying before, but there's a good bit of grassy, slightly herbal hop character around the edge of the palate here too. So this is a very, very unusual beer. I've never reviewed anything quite like this one before. In comparison with a German Glühwein, it does have the nice licorice, and in the aftertaste you're getting a little bit of the caramel notes too, but it's really, I think from what I remember, it's a lot sharper and a lot more tart than a German Glühwein. So if you're expecting that kind of thing from this beer, more of a German Glühwein beer, this is a lot sharper and a lot more tart from what my memories of a Glühwein are. But in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I would say it's quite hard to say how well bodied this one is, because just how sharp the flavour comes in, that makes it feel very light, but as you progress through it a bit more it becomes a bit heavier, so maybe it's fair to say that this is a mid-bodied beer. It's quite an oily and quite wet mouthfeel, this one, but it's very tart and very kind of vinous feel to this one. But there is a bit of malty sweetness. As I say, that licoricey aniseed flavour in this one really adds a nice dimension to the beer, and there is a bit of dryness from probably from the hops in this beer, a kind of herbally, grassy, and maybe even a little bit aromatic character, and probably the kind of sour elements make it a bit dry as well when you move into the aftertaste. But yeah, it does. You get this really, when the sharp flavours come in, it feels very wet, and then your tongue just suddenly changes and you get this very, very dry characteristic from it as well. But it's nowhere near as dry as some of these white wines and stuff you can get. So it's a really interesting beer. What I can say about this one is that it really will test your palate, and I feel quite privileged that I've actually been able to to try one of these. I'm not sure, but I would like to try one of the new ones maybe, and see one that was brewed in 2015 and just see how it's matured. Maybe the fact that I've had this for 2.5 years and let it mature, maybe that's made it, let it oxidise just a little bit, and that's what's making it a wee bit more sharp. But I mean, overall, if you like your sour beers, then this one is a very interesting one. It has some nice elements from the German Glüh vines, so if you do enjoy German Glüh vines and you like craft beer, then perhaps this is one you want to go for. For me, I'm not sure really what I would pair this beer with, actually. If it did come to food pairings, I really don't know, because it's so unusual, but what I can tell you is, to me, this would be a kind of tasting beer. It'd be one you'd be like, oh, this is unusual, I'll give that a go and see what it's like. That's what it would be like for me. But it's quite enjoyable. Sour beers is a style of beer that it's taken me a little while to get into, and it's only with trying some of the Toil ones and stuff like that I've really began to appreciate the style. The first one I tried was actually also from Italy. It was called the Archeo Biro from Birra del Borgo. And when I first tried it, I was like, what is this? But now that I've actually reviewed a few more of them, it's a style that I can actually properly appreciate now, and this is a pretty good one. And the brewery are very, very decorated, so if you are quite into your sour beers, then I would recommend that you give Loverbeer a go. And I want to try some of the other ones and just see if I can pick up the different elements of the sour beer flavours, because for me at the moment, it's almost as if each sour beer tastes very similar, but I would like to tune my palate a little bit more and try some of them. But this is a very interesting one because it takes some of the Glühwein elements, the German Glühwein elements, and puts them into a beer, which is very interesting. And as I told you, this brewery is quite unique because they like to put some of the Italian grapes and things, and they like to do things like this, make a Glühwein. So if you want to try a very interesting beer, what I can tell you is go and check out Loverbeer from Marentino near Tuscany, near Torino, sorry, in Italy. So do go and give them a shout. This has been a very, very interesting beer review. I'm going to go and let my dad try this one because I'm sure he's probably chomping at the bit to give it a go. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. If you have tried this one, please let me know your own thoughts on it. It would be quite interesting to hear your thoughts because it is quite an unusual beer. Please comment below. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and like my Facebook page that I've made for Rampant Lion Reviews. It would be much appreciated, and please do share it around as well. But I thank you again for watching, and until my next beer review, there will be more from Italy in the future, but slàinte for now.